The fifth principle, the principle of rhythm. Most people don't realize it, but their emotions, successes, failures, even their thoughts are all part of a larger movement they can't see. It's not personal, it's rhythm, a fundamental law of the universe, and whether you're aware of it or not, it's already shaping your life. This is the fifth Hermetic principle, the principle of rhythm, and it states that everything flows in and out. Everything has its tides, its highs and lows. The universe swings like a pendulum, and this swing isn't symbolic, it's mechanical, energetic, real. For every intense experience in one direction, there will be a return swing in the opposite. The issue is that most people live completely unaware of this. When they feel great, they chase the feeling, believing it will last forever. When they fall, they panic, thinking something's gone wrong. But both are part of the same rhythm. The point of this principle is not to avoid the swing, but to understand it, and eventually to learn how to rise above it. Because while the law itself can't be stopped, it's fundamental, as we said, your position within time and space can change based on your choices. Through self-awareness, it's possible to neutralize, in a sense, the effects of the swing so that you are not emotionally dragged from one extreme to the other. Once again, everything flows in and out. Everything has its tides. The swing of the pendulum is present in all things. The rhythm of the swing to the right is the same as the rhythm of the swing to the left. Rhythm balances itself. As a matter of fact, we are the ones who are interrupting this natural rhythm of the universe. Think about it. As soon as we understand the principle of polarity, we naturally arrive at the next layer, the fifth principle. We've all heard of Newton's third law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and his first law, which states that every object remains at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an external force. Well, these laws describe motion, but motion is not just a mechanical concept. It's also energetic, emotional, mental, and that's where rhythm begins. Rhythm is everywhere. Everyone feels it and it influences everything. Some say rhythm is one of the most ancient languages of communication, not just between people, but between entire universes. Still, we don't need to go that far out to understand it. Let's look at it in a more local, more grounded way. The core parameter of rhythm is frequency. How often something pulses, how fast or slow it moves. Frequency has a range, and the key components of rhythm are metronome, the pulse, and rhythmic patterns that embed themselves into our consciousness through repetition. What you believe, what you repeat that you believe, eventually becomes a reality for you. Other people that have other beliefs will have a different perception of their reality. That's how it works. In beginnings and endings, in stars, in space, in human life, in animals, in the mind, in energy, in matter, and the ancient Hermetics knew that. They discovered this principle's universal application and even found a way to avoid, or at least soften, what we might call its negative effects. Let me explain. The pendulum always swings at the same speed and falls to both sides. It moves from one polarity to the other and back again. But the great masters learned to control themselves so well that they could enter a state of inner stillness and neutralize the swing, avoiding the automatic shift into the opposite extreme. How did they do that? Listen to this idea. Basically, we think that we live in a dual reality, in a dualistic nature. But that's not what the ancient masters knew. They knew that if you change your, in a sense, point of perception, your point of focus, your point of choice, the pendulum will not go backwards, because you've already moved your point of perception. So you will naturally move forward if you know the perfect moment to change your perception. So if you change your perception just before the pendulum swings back, you will go forward, and that way you will not feel the negative impact in your life, if that makes sense. This principle is closely connected to the fourth one of the polarities. The pendulum itself is a living example of energy moving from plus to minus, from minus to plus. It can never remain stuck to one side, as we said. It constantly seeks movement. That movement, the vibration between two poles, is the force. From one hand, the gravitational force, but from the other, the manifestation force. It's also simultaneously the resistance to manifestation. You see, with the same force that you can create something, with the same force you can destroy it, you can resist to create it, in a sense. The tension between wanting to be and not to be. Focus on one side and on one decision, to act, to create, to manifest, and the energy begins to move toward a stable point of realization. A strong choice, decisive, triggers the realization, what many call manifestation. But when doubt enters, when we hesitate, the energy avoids the balance point and returns to the field of potential, where all things are possible, but a choice is needed in order to realize something out of the infinite. That's the path of unrealized dreams. That's the people who only dream of things, who only wish they would happen in a perfect timeline of their miserable life. This constant hesitation, this loop of doubt, creates the very vacuum fluctuations in physics we spoke about in the last episode. And because there are infinite potential realities, the moment you choose, something always happens. There is always a result. No choice, no movement. But choice brings consequence. And trust me, no matter what anyone tells you, if you have made a clear and an unwavering decision about what you want to do, and you keep walking in that direction, no matter what happens, no matter what people tell you, no matter how they describe you, sooner or later, if you don't give up and go to another path, you will reach what you've asked for. It might take longer than expected, but it will happen, because that's the law. Doubt is what slows down the process of manifestation. Remember that. Certainty speeds it up. Now, manifestation itself is not a fixed point. It's a wave function that pulses and spirals. It's an impulse that emerges from nothingness and eventually returns to it. If this function increases its frequency to the right, the amplitude to the left automatically increases. Without a new impulse, the wave begins to fade, and so it constantly grows and fades. A dynamic of tides rises and falls. That's why we all have those days where everything flows effortlessly, where things just seem to work without effort, and then other days where nothing works at all. Not even pouring a glass of water feels right. You just want to lay down and be like, oh, I want this to be over as soon as possible. It's important to note and to understand here that this is not karma punishing you. This is not your fate. You are not a reactor of your life. This is the principle of rhythm in action. And on a much larger scale, this is how worlds are born. Stars form. They reach their peak and eventually they collapse. After eons and eons of time, they become dead matter, waiting for the next impulse to activate their inner energy and start a new stellar cycle. This is how everything works. It is born, it grows, it dies, only to be born again. Night follows day, day follows night. The pendulum swings from summer to winter and back again. Neither comes first, they simply flow into one another as part of the same rhythm. And if we understand that rhythm is outside of these limitations that we put onto the world, then we can start riding the wave. A key element in this entire process is what we call the additional impulse, the push that reactivates the wave function. What is that in simple terms? It's the conscious, decisive choices we make every day, every hour, every moment. Remember this core idea. Thinking is existence, and existence is thinking. Doubt, avoidance, procrastination, laziness, and mental escape do not move us forward. They only create vacuum fluctuations, short lived, chaotic energy disturbances that push our desires further out of reach. Conscious choice, conscious action, on the other hand, is directed impulse. It's like this full charge of electricity that shakes the whole space around you and creates and attracts your deepest desires. Change always creates a result. So if you want to change something in your life, anything, the first step is a clear and conscious decision, because that's what causes the result we call manifestation. As we already established, there's no such thing as an absolute stillness. Everything always moves, everything always is vibrating, and that's proven by science today. Even in apparent stillness, there are still fluctuations which are constantly moving, probabilities of everything for everything. This entire movement, the rise, the fall, the return, is part of this universal rhythm, the rhythm of the universe, in a sense, the dance and the breath of the universe. So, elementary particles, atoms, molecules, and all structures turn endlessly within the cycle of their own nature. The cosmic pendulum is always in motion, and this principle applies to every level of life. Modern science understands this well and accepts it as a universal law on the material level, but the ancient Hermetics applied it much further. They knew that its effects reached the human mind, emotional states, and the inner world. They understood that people are not just affected by rhythm passively, they are responsible for how they respond to it. An event happens. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a Dodge Challenger 2015 SXT Plus. Brilliant car, classic American black, Vin Diesel style, Fast and Furious. I really wanted this car, and when I got it, I drove it for around 2 years, and then it showed the problem of selling it. For 6 months, I couldn't find someone to buy it. Why? Was my car that bad? No, it was actually pretty well. The interior, the exterior, they were like almost like brand new. But in my mind, I wasn't ready to break my cycle, in a sense, with the car, to break my relationship with the car. So when I went deep and when I really decided that it was over for me, that I had really enjoyed my ride with this Dodge Challenger, and that I am ready to move forward, that I am accepting it, that I'm even accepting someone to come and for me to sell it to a lower price than I imagined. Then 3 people called me, and one of these 3 people, in the next, what was it, 3 or 4 days, came and bought the car. But 6 months, you see, I was looking around, blaming myself, blaming the environment. What the hell's going on? Why am I the only one who cannot sell his car? what is happening? Am I that bad? No, I wasn't. I was just out of the rhythm of the natural flow. Things happen because the natural flow of the universe always strives to help you. We are the one who are limiting ourselves, who are saying, no, this is going to happen like this. And if it doesn't happen like the way I imagine it, then no, I don't accept it because we want to control. But we don't understand that the real control in that sense is if we let it go, if we let it all, and we allow ourselves to be in this presence of the universe, if we allow ourselves to accept that everything is happening for us, not to us, then whatever happens, we will know on a deeper level that it must benefit us. And if we look at from that perspective, then the magic happens. I don't know if I explain it good, but yeah, this is what happened with the Dodge Challenger. So I experienced the principle of rhythm straight to my face, and the paradox is that I know it, I've studied it, and still it happened, and I was like, what the hell, man? So you just have to pay attention, I guess. The Hermetics discovered that while rhythm itself cannot be stopped, it can be transcended. They called this the law of neutralization. In practice, this means they would raise the frequency of their awareness above the low swing of the pendulum. When it tried to pull them into the negative, they were unaffected, not because the swing disappeared, but because it no longer touched them, because they changed their perspective, as we said in the beginning, because they changed their point of focus. For example, something bad happens in your life, or you are in a presence of, or you have a conversation with your closer ones that you feel like you know the outcome, you know what's gonna happen. In that moment, just before it happens, you change your perspective and you pull a question like, have you been working out lately? You actually look really good. Did you watch the game yesterday? Oh, do you know that movie, Interstellar? It's an amazing movie. Do you know what happened when I watched it last night? You change your perspective. You say something that you wouldn't even think of. You just let yourself to feel the flow of the universe that's always inside of you, and you see how this principle will work. It's a helper, big helper for confusing situations, for hard situations, for hard conversations, for people that you don't like. It really helps a lot. It's like standing above a storm. The wind still blows, the pendulum still swings, but it no longer shakes you. And this ability is not exclusive to the ancient masters. All of us do this every day, unconsciously. Our job is to make it conscious. We've all had moments where we refuse to let a mood or emotion ruin our state of mind. But again, there are two options. Either we learn to do this consciously with full awareness of our choice and action, or we remain passive, allowing ourselves to be thrown back and forth by the mental pendulum of thoughts, moods, people, emotions, descriptions, and so on. Think about it. How often have you felt inspired, uplifted, even euphoric, only to fall shortly after into doubt, discouragement, or emptiness? The same goes for fear and courage. They often arrive together, taking turns, shifting back and forth. Most people don't even suspect there's a law behind this. They just assume it's part of life. Random. It's a big randomness. It just happened. Luck. It's not luck. It's the law that you haven't yet learned. It is rhythm. And understanding this principle helps you regain control, but the true control, not by force, but through awareness, through acceptance, through allowance. You begin to master the rhythm of your emotions. You stop being a passenger and become an observer. And when the observer becomes conscious, they start to understand themselves better, not as a victim of waves, but as someone who can navigate them. Willpower, focus, and decisive choice are stronger than this principle. But the principle itself doesn't disappear. It never stops. What changes is how much it controls your mind and your reality. And that's the real goal. Not to destroy the pendulum, but to stop being dragged by it, to understand its flow in a sense. Now, one of the most important teachings of this principle is that rhythm always balances itself. This means that a person who tends to experience only a small amount of pain will also experience only a small amount of joy. The rule is simple. The greater the pain, the greater the joy. And in the end, the scales will always find their balance. But here's where things get interesting. If you truly understand the principle and live with awareness, then even if you experience a high level of pleasure or fulfillment, it doesn't necessarily mean that you must later pay for it with suffering. No, that only happens when the process remains unconscious and unbalanced. If the process of neutralization is mastered, in other words, if you reach a higher state of awareness, of presence, and know yourself deeply, the pain is no longer necessary. It's a limitation, once again. If you read stories about spiritual awakenings and people who have struggled a lot, yes, their stories may be true, but that doesn't mean that your awakening must happen with a lot of pain. No, if you catch yourself in a way, in a sense, at the right moment, just before the pain comes, you will escape the pain and you will transform it into a great lesson that has helped you to become the man you are today. And this is not just words, this really happens. This law is it's just like the law of gravity. It's a real law. You just need to realize it. Pain is no longer necessary. Of course, in the beginning, it shows up for a reason. Of course, it's there to teach us, to push us, to pay attention, to alert us that something is out of alignment. That we should pay attention to something in order to create the life that we want. It's more like an invitation to stop, to reflect, to turn inward in search for answers. But once those lessons are learned, we can begin to avoid unnecessary suffering. It's not instant, yes. It requires patience and real work, inner, yes. The principle never stops functioning. Even if the opposite hasn't yet appeared in the present moment, it will show up later, in one form or another. The good news is that the more conscious we are, the more we can reduce the damage. Understanding how it works allows us to soften the consequences. People think the ups and downs are karma, but it's just polarity. Some people will see it as love, others will label it as ego, some will see help, others will feel attacked. The mature ones will continue anyway, because they understand that they just create this space of possibilities and they let it to be open. They are students of life who are not afraid to face themselves, who step out of the comfort to grow. And in doing so, they change not only the way they experience life, they change reality itself. Together, they stop reacting and they start choosing, guided not by rhythm, but by awareness, by conscious choice, by information that comes and goes, and it's always inside and around us, because we ourselves are energy, we are information, we are full of the essence of the universe. And the only thing actually we must do, if there is a must, is to allow that energy and perspective into our lives because it's already in us. So you cannot find it somewhere in the outer world because it's already inside of you. Find your personal and unique way to change more often your perspective because it doesn't matter what happens. It only matters what you do with what happens because then you change your perspective. You react differently to the same circumstances and you get a different result. That is the principle in action. Cheers for now, and I'll see you in the next one.